Well, welcome back, everybody, to Health Reboot Summit. And I'm so excited about introducing to you our next guest, Dr. Tracy Gapin. Dr. Tracy Gapin is a board-certified urologist, world-renowned men's health and performance expert, and the founder of the Gapin Institute, the global leader in high-performance medicine. He's an Aggie from Texas A&M, and he went to medical school at UT Southwest in Dallas and completed his general surgery and urology training at the University of Florida. Dr. Gapin spent almost 20 years in a busy urology practice in Sarasota, Florida, before launching the Gapin's Institute. He's a fellow of the American College of Surgeons and a member of the American Academy of Anti-Aging, Age Management Medical Group, and International Peptide Society. Dr. Gapin is a thought leader, a professional speaker, and the author of the best-selling books Male 2.0 and Codes of Longevity. So welcome, Dr. Gapin. I am really pleased to see you again on our summits, and thank you so much
Monika.
for coming. I'm excited
Glad to be here with you today.
Beautiful. I'm excited to talk today about blood sugar regulation and wearable technology, but I would love to start just with you a little bit and tell us, how did you make that switch from being a urologist to an expert in men's health and high performance medicine?
Thank you, Monika, and glad to be here with you this morning. So as you mentioned, I spent 20 plus years in urology, running a very busy practice, doing a lot of robotic surgery, prostate cancer work, dealing with men's health issues. And what I found through my own personal health issues, which is often how this happens, I found that our healthcare system is broken and our disease model approach to men's health just doesn't work. And we have this tendency toward neglect and complacency when it comes to men's health. And, if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of concept. And I was guilty of that myself when I woke up one day and found that I was in pretty bad shape. And so when I found that the traditional healthcare system wasn't built to help me get healthy, I knew the same thing applied to my patients as well. So I started going down rabbit hole after rabbit hole of information, knowledge, learned about epigenetics, which is really simply the science of how our lifestyle, our environment, our behaviors affects our body's performance. Learned about functional medicine, learned about peptide therapy, and learned how to integrate all that with wearable technology and genetics so that I can really personalize it and provide individualized medicine, recognizing that each of us are different and each of us have unique needs, and each of us are going to respond differently to certain diets, for example, or certain exercise workout regimens. And how can we track that? How can we provide a very data-driven approach so that we are honoring the fact that we're all so uniquely different based on our genetics, based on our physiology and how we respond? And so that's where technology comes in. That's where using wearable technology. I know we're going to talk about CGM tracking in a moment, but I love using technology, whether it's tracking heart rate variability or HRV, which is really a surrogate for our body's stress levels, whether it's tracking our sleep, which is so critically important that we get good quality sleep, not quantity, but quality sleep. And then blood sugar is another great example as well.
Beautiful. So before we delve into more practicalities of tracking that information and how to use technology, let's sort of paint a bigger picture, because you work with systemic or systems approach to health, and this is what we're also talking about on the summit. We're talking about healthy weight loss and maintenance in sort of the context of systemic approach to medicine versus symptomatic approach. So what is wrong with the symptomatic approach right now?
Yeah, great question, Monika. The disease model of healthcare is really focused on treating symptoms, treating disease. When I was back in my urology days, you needed an ICD-10 code, a diagnosis code. And that diagnosis code was the basis for, insurance reimbursement, the basis for patients getting their medications covered by their insurance plans, et cetera. And so there's such a focus on treating disease, and there's nothing toward optimization, nothing toward promoting health. How can I improve my performance? I launched the Gapin Institute here almost a year ago to the day, because men would complain every day of, I want to have more energy. I want to lose weight. I want to have better sex. And our traditional healthcare system is just isn't made for that. It's not built for that. And so the executives, entrepreneurs that I work with, they found the same problem that I did when I had health issues, that our traditional healthcare system has no solution for that.
Okay. So how does blood sugar come into the picture of optimizing health, and why is it such an important subject to speak about?
Sure. So when we look at issues like low testosterone, obesity, cognitive decline, cardiovascular disease, and we ask, what are the underlying concepts or triggers that cause these problems? We look at a few things that are at the foundational level. Number one is chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, which is basically our cells getting overstressed, or insulin resistance. And those are really the three main physiologic processes that we want to focus on improving to help people optimize their health, optimize their performance, have better energy, have amazing sex, etc. So let me show you why this is so important. When we look at insulin resistance is basically our body can no longer handle fluctuations in blood sugar from typically it's from chronically poor diet, from chronic stress can do it as well, where your blood sugar rises and your body's production of insulin can't keep up with it. It basically you're overwhelming your system's ability to respond to blood sugar fluctuations. You're no longer sensitive. The pancreas can no longer produce insulin, and your body no longer responds to that insulin appropriately. And that's really the concept behind insulin resistance. When you have insulin resistance, it affects blood vessel function. Blood vessels, to relax and increase blood flow, need a hormone called nitric oxide. This is the key hormone involved in a man getting an erection. Viagra works by increasing nitric oxide locally. So what's the main physiologic process that affects nitric oxide production? Insulin resistance. So that's how it all comes full circle when guys tell me, my diet has nothing to do with my erections. Sir, your diet has everything to do with your erections, and that's the connection. Insulin resistance is the key. So that's why tracking blood sugars, which is a measure of our what's called metabolic health, how our body is responding, how sensitive we are when it comes to insulin regulating our blood sugar, how can we improve that? And so that's really the key. And so that's why I love using CGM, continuous glucose monitoring, because it has a direct correlation with a man's performance.
Okay, beautiful. So let's get into how we use those devices. How do we choose? How do we become more savvy and better consumers when it comes to making the choices and also using them? Because I can imagine it's not just about plugging a device and just like having your data, and that data is not going to be valuable unless you know what you're doing with it, right?
Oh, great point, Monika. Yeah, so it's all about how do you interpret the data. Collecting the data is the first step, but if you don't interpret it appropriately, then it's not very helpful. So what we want to do is we want to track blood sugar simply. And that's what continuous glucose monitors do, is they will continually 24/7, it'll track your body's blood sugar. How does it work? It works with a small sensor on your side of your arm. Typically it's about this big around, maybe like a $half, a little between a quarter and $1.50 in diameter. Very thin wafer sized device that gets applied to your arm and has a little sensor that goes under the skin. And that is tracking the the sugar levels of the interstitial fluid, which is the sugar just below the skin, which correlates exactly with your blood sugar. And so that's how it works, is it's sensing the interstitial fluid sugar levels, which correlates to blood sugar. So that's the device. That's how we can track it. We need to get that data and interpret it. And that's where we have several apps that we can use for that. So there are a number of direct-to-consumer companies out there that you can pay them, and they'll put you on a membership model where they'll give you this nice, pretty user interface. You can use the ones that we use. We use the Libre, Freestyle Libre devices, and I will actually prescribe those. And in most cases, your health insurance can actually cover it. So when I work with my high-performing individuals here in my practice, I don't cover disease model insurance-based healthcare. I want to be clear. However, the CGM itself, you can actually, in most cases, get that covered through your insurance plan, even if you're not diabetic.
Great.
Once you get that device, you can connect it to the app, and you can use a number of different apps that are out there. We use the Freestyle Libre app. Libre View is what it's called. You can correlate that with your lifestyle, with your nutrition intake, with stress, with sleep. And now the magic happens. Now you can correlate fluctuations in blood sugar with your behaviors. And that's really the key, is understanding how do you interpret that data in relation to what you've done. And that will help you understand this. Let me give you a great example of this. Yeah. In the past, before Smart Me came along, I would eat oatmeal for breakfast. Steel cut organic oats for breakfast. Doesn't sound that bad. Put a CGM on and my blood sugar went through the roof. Forget the numbers for now. We could talk about the numbers in a moment, but it went through the roof. When I would eat protein first, when I would eat eggs first, that spike diminished dramatically. When I ate other foods, when I had eggs and avocado, for example, and maybe a few berries in the morning, my blood sugar barely budged at all. And so understanding this information helps me the next time I go to make breakfast. I now can understand how those foods are going to affect me, and that's the key. Is interpretation.
Beautiful. So paint a picture, like if with somebody who may be new to this whole thing and they are getting a device and connecting to an app, can you sort of guide us through how should they start? And I understand, it's always good to be in contact and under care of a functional medicine doctor or somebody who can guide you. But, just to kind of give us a bit of an idea of how would that look like when you start tracking, when you start watching what you eat and watching your blood levels.
Yeah. So you can certainly do it on your own. I would say it's tougher when you're on your own. I always, I'm a huge proponent of coaching. I personally believe that everyone needs a coach. And when patients work with me and my team, we have coaches. We have health coaches, functional medicine trained health coaches that work with my clients to understand how their lifestyle is impacting ultimately their health and performance. So what that would include, whether you're doing it on your own or with a coach, is taking meticulous, detailed notes of exactly what you're eating, of your stress levels, of your behaviors, and of your sleep. And when we look at that blood sugar curve, we're able to understand what was it you ate, what was it that you did, your sleep, your stress, your behaviors that affected those blood sugars. That helps us guide behavior. Because we need to understand that this concept of epigenetics is really important. 75 to 90% of our health outcomes are driven by our behaviors. We just got to know what to do. And this is where the personalization comes into play, of using genetics, using wearable tech data to guide those decisions, because we have control of our health. You got to really understand, if we take action and own our health and make these critical decisions, we can reverse diabetes. We can reverse cardiovascular disease. We're suffering a men's health crisis where testosterone levels are half of what they were 20 years ago. Fertility is plummeting. Obesity, over 70% of men and women actually are overweight or obese, and it's getting worse. And so we got to take charge. We got to decide that we're going to take action here. And this is the first step, is understanding how our behaviors are directly affecting our health. So, for example, I would, I would emphasize using the CGM device. You don't need to use it continually your whole life. You use it 2 weeks at a time. The device lasts for 2 weeks, then it expires. You'll get another device. I'll typically recommend using it for 4 weeks at a time, doing 2 weeks and another 2 weeks, maybe 6 months later, do it again. You don't need it the whole time, because you've gotten enough data and you've interpreted it to understand how to apply it. So I'll give you an example. When I was using it, I would go, Used to think sushi was great. Sushi is kryptonite for me because the white rice is what I found. However, I could eat a meal with Brussels sprouts, fish, and white rice, let's just say. And if I change the order up, I can see directly on my CGM how my blood sugar changes can vary dramatically. For example, if I was to eat the white rice first, and then the chicken or fish, and then the vegetables, I would have a fairly significant jump in my blood sugar. I would find, however, that if I were to eat the broccoli or Brussels sprouts first, and then ate the fish or chicken, and then the carb, even if it's white rice, I prefer brown rice, but white rice, that blood sugar fluctuation would be minimal,
Interesting.
negligible, simply by changing the order of the foods that I'm eating. And so this is how valuable CGM tracking is, where you can really directly real time see what you're doing and how it's affecting your physiology and ultimately your performance. So many people
Great.
lose weight, and it's simply the foods that you're eating in the order you're eating them.
Yeah, that's beautiful, because it's sort of crushing this whole idea. It's like, no, carbs are bad. You should never have carbs, or, you should only have this or that food, which in this light, it just, it's absolutely not true, because people will have different responses, and the order of the food is actually very important. So, and you wouldn't have known that without your device, right?
That's right. That's right. Exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great. So, so let's see, kind of recap. So if somebody's never been exposed to that, just perhaps they've been struggling with weight for years, and maybe went on a low carb diet or whatnot, tried all sorts of things, but still nothing's budging. They would probably get this device and sort of be in that experiment research mode for maybe 4 weeks, right? Writing down everything they eat and how that correlates with them.
Yeah.
With the curves.
Yeah, exactly. Another way to perhaps look at it is there are blind spots in your health that are holding you back. Blind spots preventing you from losing weight. Blind spots that are affecting your cognitive function. Blind spots that are preventing you from having the best sex life that you could have. And it's often not necessarily just diet and exercise. It's often hormones. It's often microbiome. Also, other issues we could talk about another day. But wearable devices is the first way that we can very simply, very easily identify some of those hidden blind spots.
Beautiful. So we talked about blood sugar regulation and devices that help us with that. What other devices you are recommending, and what other data is important to start to uncover those blind spots?
Sure. I am a huge proponent of tracking heart rate variability and resting heart rate. These are metrics that give us a window into your body's stress levels. Now, people tend to think of stress as psychological stress about finances, marital issues, job issues. Stress doesn't necessarily mean psychological. It can mean any overwhelming issue to your body. It could be stress from toxins, stress from gut issues, stress from hormone imbalance, stress from, we talked about blood sugar issues. So HRV, or heart rate variability, is a direct surrogate for those stress levels. And a lot of times people are struggling with weight issues, energy, metabolism, sex, etc., simply because of chronic stress. When our bodies are chronically stressed, it produces the hormone cortisol. Cortisol is our stress hormone. Short bursts of cortisol is great after exercise, if you're being chased by a bear, etc. Cortisol is wonderful. But chronically elevated cortisol crushes metabolism. It makes you store fat. It raises blood sugar. It crushes testosterone. It destroys sexual function. And so we want to be able to track that and identify, again, interpreting it and analyzing what's causing that. And so HRV, heart variability, can be measured directly through an HRV device. There are a number of them out there. The one that I use is a chest strap, and it's made by Polar. The Polar H10 strap is the one that I use every morning when I wake up at 6 a.m. as I sit down on the couch, and I am spending 2.5 minutes there getting my daily reading of my HRV, or heart rate variability. And that is a marker of our internal stress levels.
Okay, beautiful. So can you tell us more about the numbers? Like, how do we interpret that data and start to understand the numbers? And we didn't speak about it in terms of blood sugar yet. So let's maybe delve into that.
Yeah, sure. Let's go back to blood sugar first. So when we look at numbers, we want to always keep our blood sugar under 140. Even after we eat, especially after we eat, we want to make sure it never goes above 140. And we also care about how long does it take for your blood sugar to come back down to baseline. So fasting blood sugar should be typically around 90-ish or so. Typically, we like it under 90. Some people have it as high as 95, which is a little too high for me. Over 100 fasting blood sugar is where you start to look at insulin resistance and prediabetes, et cetera. But typically, fasting blood sugar under 90 is the goal. So 85 would be a great number for fasting blood sugar. But then during the day, your blood sugar is going to rise as you're active, as your body's producing cortisol, as you're eating and being active. But it should never go above 140. If it does, you want to look at what did you do, what did you eat, et cetera, that might be causing it to be that high. I see a lot of executives I work with who are chronically stressed, and they have no balance. They have no recovery time built into their lives, and they're chronically running blood sugars of 120. And you're never going to achieve your goals when your blood sugar is running that high. And so tracking it allows us to see that very clearly. So that's blood sugar.
So that's interesting, because you're saying that it may not just be necessarily what you're eating and how you're eating it, but it may also be that lack of that recovery time where you can calm down your hormonal responses and get into more of a recovery state.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And, when we were talking about HRV earlier, we never quite got to sleep, but sleep is one of the most important aspects of our health, our time to repair and recover. And when you have poor sleep, either intentionally or not, poor quality sleep stresses your body, raises cortisol, raises your resting blood sugar, raises your resting heart rate as well, which is a sign of a stressed system. And so you're exactly right that a lot of times we'll see blood sugars, fasting blood sugars elevated simply from the stress of poor sleep.
Okay. So how do we track sleep and quality of sleep? And let's maybe distinguish between quantity and quality. And I know, a lot of people have heard a lot about that, but I would like to kind of have more of a precise understanding.
Yes, for sure. So when we look at tracking sleep, most of the high performers I work with, they'll tell me, I sleep fine. I go to bed at 11. I wake up at 6. I'm fine. Leave me alone. Okay. So that's the quantity. When you go to bed versus when you wake up, that's the total number of hours of sleep. That's one metric. A much more valuable and important metric is the quality of sleep. And by that, we need to understand that sleep has different stages. So there's REM sleep, which is the very lightest stage of sleep. When you're just falling asleep, you're still arousable to sound, you're dreaming, and it's a very superficial layer of sleep that has some valuable component to it. Then there's non-REM sleep, and non-REM sleep is broken down into stage 1 and 2, which is light sleep, which is fairly not helpful. It's fairly insignificant sleep, if you will, light sleep. Deep sleep is the key. Stages 3 and 4 of non-REM sleep is deep sleep. And so each night you'll go from REM, you'll go down into light sleep, go even further into deep sleep, and you'll come back up. Back to light, REM, and you'll do that about 4 cycles throughout the night. Those first 2, and each cycle lasts about 90 minutes, give or take. Those first 2 cycles of the night are mostly deep sleep. Those are the 2 critical phases, or critical 2 cycles of sleep where you get most of the deep sleep. The deep sleep is the restorative aspect of sleep. You're building muscle, you're restoring your hormone levels, growth hormone, you're repairing any trauma that your body's experienced from the day. That's the key stage of sleep that we're looking for, stage 3 and 4. We want an hour of deep sleep every night. We want an hour of deep sleep every night. We want 2 hours of REM sleep every night. Those are the key metrics when we're looking at quality of sleep. You need to get a good device. We'll talk about which one in a moment. You need to get a good device and track your sleep quality, understanding that the deep sleep is the most important phase of sleep, and then the REM sleep would be important as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how we track it.
Yeah. So there are a number of devices that track sleep. Some that you wear. There's actually some devices you put on your nightstand. I don't trust any of those. There's actually studies looking at the wearable devices that we use for sleep as well. And what's interesting is most devices are not incredibly accurate when it comes to sleep. The Aura Ring, and I'm not a paid, I have no money in the game here. The Aura Ring has been the only device that's been validated against polysomnography, PSG, which is a sleep study, validated to be the most accurate when it comes to truly measuring quality of sleep. And so I love the Garmin for certain reasons. I love the Whoop for certain reasons. BioStrap and Fitbit are okay. Apple Watch is not great for sleep. But the Aura by far, when it comes to specifically tracking sleep, is the best one out there because it's been shown, validated to compare to sleep studies.
Okay, great. So, but nice and good. It's say when we are talking about blood sugar regulation, we can always change what we eat or how we eat it, the order. But when it comes to sleep, and I hear from so many people, I'm waking up at 2 a.m, or I cannot fall asleep again. I'm trying my best. I have my dark covers on my windows. What is happening? And it's becoming another, like obesity epidemic, that difficulty sleeping and getting quality
Absolutely.
sleep.
Oh, great question, Monica. In general, when we hear people waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning and can't fall back asleep again, the one word explanation for that is cortisol. So chronically elevated cortisol, again, stress to your system for whatever, there are a number of, list of 12 different reasons I can point to, is causing elevated cortisol. And that's why you're waking up and then you can't fall back asleep again.
So
And
what
to
do we
fix
do?
that, the next question would be how to fix that. And that's a complex answer. Our human operating systems are not simple. It requires a deep dive into finding the hidden blind spots, looking at hormones, looking at the gut, looking at toxins, looking at micronutrients, looking at all these different facets, inputs into our system, and understanding what's causing that. And that's what I specialize in. That's what I love doing is really plugging your race car into the computer and finding out what's going on, finding out what's causing that chronically elevated cortisol and how do we fix it.
Okay, so this is more of a specific issue to each person. Like we can't really make a lot of general statements about a cortisol, but if you are having that problem in terms of, waking up in the middle of the night or not being able to get quality sleep, cortisol is the number one thing to look into and start exploring. Very good. And I know, so we talk about the epidemic of obesity and blood sugar issues, but then you also talk about the epidemic of testosterone deficiency. How does it all come together?
Yeah, there's this concept of metabolic syndrome, and this is where everything ties together. It's where there's this confluence of symptoms: low testosterone, elevated triglycerides, elevated cholesterol, high blood pressure, truncal obesity. Okay. And it's becoming an epidemic where we're seeing this in just walk down the street. You'll see guys with these big bellies and they're chronically inflamed. They're overweight and they need help. And a big part of it is testosterone, that these guys have low testosterone levels. We can talk about why, but markedly diminished testosterone, that's typically associated with chronic inflammation. Insulin resistance is typically associated with altered microbiome, basically the bug, altered balance of the bacteria in our gut. And all of these come together to create this ugly, vicious cycle, this downward spiral that we're seeing that explains the men's health crisis that we're dealing with.
Okay, so we're delving into some really systemic, complex issues that, obviously we cannot cover in this short interview. But I think this is a great start to start tracking the information and becoming more savvy in terms of, having data in front of you so that you know what's actually happening. Because I think a part of it too, oftentimes we tell ourselves, I eat healthy, I'm doing everything I can, but are you really? Like, we need to have that data and information in front of us to really be able to attest to that. So before we conclude, I do want to ask you, like, can you tell us a story about a patient or somebody that you find as kind of an example of making great progress and optimizing the health, so that
Absolutely.
we can bring some positive note here to that interview?
Yeah. So one of my clients, he's actually become a close friend of mine over the years. His name is Tommy, and Tommy was a wealth advisor when he came to see me. And he could not lose weight. He's like, whatever I do, I can't lose weight. I've heard this thousands of times. And he told me how he'd wake up at 5 in the morning and go run on a treadmill for an hour to start his day. And he was eating keto, and I'm doing everything right, doc. I'm eating clean, I'm eating healthy, and doing all the things that he thought he was supposed to be doing. And first thing we do with the men who join my programs is we run genetics. Well, we found that based on his genetics, he was eating the wrong foods. His body, you mentioned carbs are the enemy earlier. People think carbs are the enemy. In his case, he actually does better with higher complex carb intake. I don't mean candy and cupcakes and donuts. I'm talking about complex carb, like quinoa, broccoli, sweet potatoes. Healthy carbs. His body does better. He loses weight better with higher complex carb intake. His genetics show that he did better with a different type of fitness plan. He did better with more strength training and burst type training. He had some micronutrient issues. We found that he had chronically elevated cortisol. So we had to fix those issues with chronically elevated cortisol, cleaned up his gut, identified food sensitivities that we needed to correct. And within 3 months, massive difference. And by that, I want to clarify, when we talk about outcomes, we're looking at objective data. So we actually quantify by biologic age. We can actually measure age through blood tests. We can look at tools, body composition tools, to measure lean muscle mass and visceral fat. These are the metrics that's important. And so we can quantify results to show that we're actually succeeding and helping guys reach their goals.
Beautiful. So I know you have a free a special gift to offer to our audience. Can you say more about that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I developed, this concept called high performance health, which is putting all these pieces together and helping guys not just treat disease or symptoms, but really optimize their bodies so they can achieve high performance in every area of their life. I truly believe the success you achieve in life starts and ends with your health. And so I've created my 10 secrets to high performance health that you can implement today, free download by texting the word health to 26786. So again, just text the number 26786, text the word health, and you'll get my free 10 secrets to high performance health. And I'm also, as a bonus, throwing in there a complimentary digital copy of my best-selling book, Male 2.0.
Oh,
so
beautiful.
Again, just text the word health to 26786. That's right.
Beautiful. We're going to share all this information with our audience. So thank you so much for that. And to conclude, is there something that we haven't spoken about that maybe you wanted to say a few words about?
God, there's so much we haven't talked about. I love peptide. Peptide therapy is something that is an innovative, different way of approaching health. It's a precision approach to really specific outcomes, whether it's reducing inflammation. There are peptides that help with immune function, help with sleep, help with boosting our body's growth hormone production. Number of peptides out there. And again, this is where we get to the personalized aspect of health, where we need to understand exactly what your body needs and treat you as an individual. And that precision approach is really what I love and I emphasize at the Gapin Institute.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I think that we're entering the age of precision medicine versus symptom medicine, because that is, we all are very unique individuals, and there is no reason to be struggling like so many people are struggling if we start to actually understand our body and how it works. individually. So thank you so much for bringing all this information today. I think that was very helpful and useful for people to start delving into the world of wearable technology and how to make use of it for your own benefit. So thank you again, Dr. Gapin. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope we'll see you again soon. And I want to encourage everybody to take advantage of Dr. Gapin's gift, and we'll connect you with all this information. And thank you again for coming, everybody. Come back for our next interview, and we will be looking forward to seeing you. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Monika.